Welcome to another IndieSphere. Didn't have one last Sunday, but we have one tonight because we have a special guest tonight, Peter Simeti, who, in my opinion, is one of the most successful indie comics creators around. I'm lucky to have him tonight. So we're going to try to promote his current campaign. And I just want to talk to him about himself, his work, and things like that. So I'm just kind of waiting for Pete to come on here. And get stuff right here. Yeah, okay. This is Pete's IndieGoGo campaign. Do that. Oh, it's good. And also, let me see. Oh, there he is. Pete's here, so let's welcome Pete.
Hey.
Pete, welcome.
You're live already? Oh, okay.
I started a little bit early to get the intro out of the way. I don't have a long intro. It's like a minute long. And then if you just want to hang on for like 10 seconds, I'm trying to get in this routine. I usually stream on Sundays. And I have this little thing called the Sunday Salute. It's basically just thanking certain people who are here. So a really quick Sunday salute, even though it's Thursday, but we're going to do a makeup for that. So I want to thank my brother Rick, who's in chat, and young Hannah, who is a young, beautiful, talented voice actress, and also to a good friend, becoming a good friend of mine, great supporter, Tyler, who lives in the mountains of Virginia, and then Kyle Prometheus in the UK, and Danny in Berlin, and I think that about covers it. So these people usually are in chat, and they've been really good for that. So anyways, that's that. So you're going to have to bear with me because I'm not 100% comfortable with the whole live streaming yet. I'm still feeling my way around. So like sharing screens may be a little twitchy.
Okay.
This is my 9th stream in 2 months. And so, you know what I mean? I don't know how long it took you to get used to it.
I gotta say, Kurt, I'm kind of curious as to why you invited me then.
Oh, what do you mean? I'm sorry.
If you're still getting used to all of this.
Well, because you it was actually Kyle who told me to that you were looking for shows to be on to help promote your IndieGoGo. And at first I was like, nah. I said, Pete's got a huge channel, and I've never met him, and my show is just starting. I'm small. And Kyle actually kind of pushed me. He's like, well, try it. He's like, you have some people who could back his book and everything. And then last night I was like, yeah, what the hell? And so I messaged you, and I was like, hey, if you want to come on my show, come on my show. So even though I'm fairly new at this, but there are people in chat who I think may, surprise you when it comes to helping you out. So if that's cool with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. So do you want to start off telling us about...
One thing with you, you're sounding very echoey. Do you have a microphone hooked up?
not mic. I don't have an actual mic yet. It's on the camera, so I have to still purchase a actual microphone like you have. I got the headphones, but I don't have the mic yet. So
Okay. You might want to because it kind of sounds like you're in a really empty room, like or like a bathroom or something like that.
Oh, it's a big room, that's for sure.
So you might want to try hitting in the audio settings echo cancellation or something like that. That might help you out.
Okay, in the here in the settings here on
Yep.
let's see. Echo. I actually.
It'll take a second or so to adjust,
Also,
and it should sound a little better.
I have reduced mic background noise as well.
That could help.
Mic volume is not maxed out. So is that any better?
Sounds a little better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know once I get a microphone that will help. I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure how long, if I'm going to continue live streaming or not. This is this whole trial basis. Like if it works, it works. If not, I probably won't. So, but anyways, I thought I just offered we just wanted to kind of offer to help get your, try to help you however we can. I know, even though we're small, but you never know, So, do you want to tell us about your campaigns first, or you just want to go right into talking about King?
I'm just here to have a conversation. What do you want to talk about, Kurt?
Okay. Well, let's start off with your campaign.
I don't like the whole infomercial, sell the campaign, sell the stuff sort of thing. I like to have a conversation.
Perfect, dude, because I'm very casual. If you haven't noticed yet, I'm very casual. I hate that whole straight-laced kind of thing. So usually the live streams I've had so far is just talking, but it usually involves the indie comic sphere and things like that. And so your campaign and your interest in cryptids is kind of a lot what I'm into.
Okay.
And so we can talk about that tonight and whatever you want to talk about. But I know there's one or two people in chat who are interested in your campaign and they're thinking of backing it. So I just want to bring this up.
Well, I urge them to back it then, because there's only 8 days left. You don't have too much time.
Right.
We're getting closer and closer to the goal. The goal is $14,000. We're about 5,000 from the goal. We're 32 away from 9,000. If you scroll down a little bit on that, you can see that it's a campaign that's being held between both IndieGoGo and the Alterna site.
Right.
So we're combining the goal between that. You went past it. If you scroll up a little bit, you'll see. So we're at 8,968. So we're at 64% funded on that. Just 32 away from 9,000. And, we're going to get there. It's just a matter of when at this point.
Right. I know I backed it last night. I don't know if you saw that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The signature copy, so get your pen ready. Sign your name real cool for me.
Is a Sharpie okay? I use Sharpie.
That's all I use right here. I have tons of Sharpies.
Fantastic.
I even have rainbow-colored Sharpies because that's all I use when it comes to taking notes and everything. So this is the IndieGoGo campaign, and the link I do have in the description in the chat. So people on YouTube watching can clearly see the description in the chat. I have the IndieGoGo campaign. I also have your Alterna Comics campaign link.
Thank you.
So
appreciate it.
Like I said, I'm getting it slowly but surely. The problem is only doing this once a week. If I did this like 5 nights a week, I'd be a lot better at this. But once a week,
I mean, it takes some time. It takes some time.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's see here. Okay, I've watched you for a little while. I'll catch you here and there. It was actually about a couple years back where I caught you on a show, and they were mentioning about a comic book shop. So I just wanted to ask you, did you purchase a comic book store when you were younger?
No. What makes you think that? I
thought they said that at a young age, like 18, 19, 20, 21, you managed a comic book store or bought a comic book store, and that's how you started? No.
No. I started Alterna Comics, which is a publishing company.
Okay.
I started that imprint when I was 22.
22. Okay. Maybe I'm getting confused with that.
Yeah, but that just evolved out of being a self-publisher, really.
Okay. So you didn't have an actual store, like a store.
No, I didn't have a comic shop. No, Alterna's never been a comic shop.
Okay, and that was what, 2006?
2006, correct.
Yeah. Okay. And Alterna Comics. So that's basically your label, and you basically like do everything, right? You're a publisher. You're a printer.
Oh well, we don't print. We go through a printer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're basically a publisher.
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing, now that we're kind of moving into cryptids, what is your fascination with cryptids?
Well, I've always loved cryptids. I've always loved anything paranormal, anything unexplained, anything unknown and mysterious. So all that kind of stuff. I've always loved it, and I think it's gone hand in hand with loving comic books as well.
Okay.
Even when I was a kid, I'd go to the library, take out books about UFOs or the Bermuda Triangle or Bigfoot or, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it really just kind of got my imagination going, and I knew that eventually when I wanted to make a comic series, because I've written other comics before, I've worked on a bunch of comics, but nothing with this much of a full tilt into the supernatural and paranormal, because I wanted to do a series that was really focusing around that kind of stuff, and just didn't really have the time. Being the publisher that we were at the time for about 12 or so years, we were with distribution companies. I pulled out of distribution in 2020. So we're not with Diamond or any distributor at this point anymore. We're not with Comixology. We were one of the first publishers to be with Comixology. But now we sell everything direct. And so we don't really go through retail as much as we used to before. Some retailers order from us direct, but we don't really go through distribution. We don't do anything like that. So distribution kind of ate up a lot of my time as a creator. I've said it before that if you want to be a really good publisher, it's going to kind of mean putting the creating on the back seat. And if you want to be, and I mean publishing other people's works. And if you want to be a really good creator, it's going to mean the opposite. It's going to mean that as a publisher, you're really not going to be able to be as supportive or have as much time and energy for the other books in the lineup. If you're publishing other individuals, of course. So I've scaled back on the publishing with Alterna. A lot of different things kind of worked out well that way. And not being a part of the distribution system allowed me to have that little bit extra time to actually make my own stuff again. So that's where King Cryptid comes into play. And I started King Cryptid about 2 years ago at this point, and now we're going to have issues 5 to 9 shipping out soon. And BLOODMOON is a King Cryptid Blood Realm crossover. Blood Realm is a book that's by Robert Geronimo. He does everything on that. He does the writing, the art, the lettering, everything. So he's on issue 18 at this point. He's going to have issue 18 come out around November or so. And BLOODMOON takes place after King Cryptid number 9 and after Blood Realm number 18. So it made sense to do something like this because we can really have these two titles and these characters. The main characters in them, Chiron Morvel is in Blood Realm, King Cryptid, of course, being in King Cryptid. And readers at Alterna really love both of those titles. It's probably the top 2 titles at Alterna. So being able to kind of have this fun crossover that has an impact on both titles is a lot of fun. And I think the readers are going to have a lot of fun too. So if they enjoy it, and this is the first time we've ever done something like this, and if they enjoy it, maybe we could do more of it. But we'll have to see. Hopefully we do our jobs well.
Yeah. I noticed that there are, a lot of issues. You've got 9, this is your 9th King Cryptid that you're funding now, right?
Yeah, we're doing about 4 or 5 a year at this point.
Okay. Wow.
Eventually I want to get to like 8 to 10 a year, but that'll probably be in like a couple of years. But last year 4 came out, and this year 5 are going to come out.
All right. And then, another interesting thing I wanted to ask. Newsprint. You print on newsprint, correct?
Yep. Yeah, so the single issues are on newsprint. That started in 2017.
Okay.
Prior to that, we were putting out graphic novels for about 10 years. Very, very small amount of issues. I think we only put out maybe 5 issues or so in those 10 years. And then prior to that, it was 2 years of print on demand. So just very small print runs, digital printing, that kind of a thing, and very early days too of print on demand. Nothing like what print on demand is nowadays. Print on demand nowadays is getting so good. The technology, the books look almost indistinguishable from offset printing, which is usually larger quantities of 1,000 or more.
Right.
So with the newsprint, I just want to let people know too, if they're backing Blood Moon, Blood Moon's a graphic novel. It's not a single issue. So that graphic novel is going to be printed on a nice paper stock, an 80-pound silk-coated paper stock, as opposed to newsprint, which is very similar to like a grocery store flyer or a newspaper, that kind of a thing. Just in case people aren't familiar with newsprint comics, comics being printed on newsprint for decades upon decades for a very long time until the industry kind of didn't really do that anymore. And for some reason, they kept telling all of us that it just wasn't possible. But it is possible. It's cheaper to print on newsprint. And I think there's something about it too. It looks great. It adds like an undercoating to the art. You know, the paper has a tone to it. It has a different feel. It absorbs ink differently. And a lot of people comment, of course, they love the newsprint smell. So, you know, there's something intrinsically comic book about newsprint. And the industry, it's a shame to see largely turning away from newsprint for about maybe 2 decades or so. But Alterna, we're fully embracing it. You know, when it comes to the single issues, they're going to stay on newsprint for as long as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of looking into newsprint, and again, I would consider it like old school comics because, you know, as kids, everything was on newsprint. You know, comics were very floppy, you know. Yeah. And then what it seemed to me, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it the 90s? Because 90s I know was big with comics when it came to, it like changed. They became very colorful, more dark, more graphic.
Well, they wanted to cater to the collector market. And so a big selling point was the shift into a more premium paper stock to cater to collectors. But the irony there is that a big factor with the collectability of comics was the fact that they were printed on something that just was difficult sometimes to maintain the upkeep. But with the advent of bags and boards that were acid-free, different printing techniques and things like that, comic condition wasn't really going to be a factor anymore when it came to collectors keeping their comics nice and safe for decades. So printing them on premium paper was sort of like another bonus, another thing to look at and say, oh, you know, they're so nice. You know, it looks great. And I'm not a fan of the glossy paper. I think it makes it very difficult to read. I like the matte coated paper, if we're going to say premium paper stock. Silk coated is a nice version of like an in-between. It has less glare than both the glossy or the matte, but it's got a nicer in-between finish between the glossy and the matte. So when it comes to newsprint, though, of course, there's no glare. There's nothing like that. Right. But the thing that was always funny to me, and I'll show an issue here, is that so this is King Cryptid #1, and so the front comic, it's a gloss cover, but the interior is on newsprint, and you know we've been told for a long time you can't really make comics look great on newsprint, but I must have found the secret.
You're right. Proved them wrong. Good for you.
And I thought they always looked great anyway. You know, you could still do a lot of modern coloring techniques. You just have to adjust. And you could easily do that in a lot of the graphic software that's available now. You can easily just adjust the ink coverage and whatnot. Because, again, it will absorb ink differently. So you can't print the same amount of ink on a piece of paper that's a more premium paper stock that can hold that kind of coverage, as opposed to newsprint. It might bleed through, or it might offset onto the other page that's opposite. So when they're kind of stacked together, you might get an impression, almost like the way Silly Putty used to work, or does work in Alterna comics anyway. It would be the same effect, but happening onto the other side of the page. So with ours, you know, we offer both this kind of modern classic nostalgia, even though we we weren't around in the 70s or 80s or anything like that. But a lot of people, they feel like because our storytelling is very classic, it's very evergreen. We don't follow trends. I'm not looking to publish stories that are about anything buzzworthy, anything that feels dated instantly. It's just good, solid storytelling, and people really enjoy that. And combined with the newsprint, it gives it this sense of a classic feel to it.
Right, and that's how I would. That's kind of how I see you as. Is it's almost like you. What you're doing with your comics is it's like you're kind of bringing back the classic style. You know, that age of comics where the newsprint, and then I think I read something where even your the type, like the style of artwork is, it kind of caters to the newsprint look. Is that right, or did I misread that somewhere?
I mean, you know, you gotta take into consideration anytime you're going to be printing anything, you have to take into consideration what is it going to be printed on, what size, what paper stock, that kind of a thing. So when it comes to, if you want to get something published with Alterna, our submissions are closed at this point. We're not taking any more submissions. But when I was looking for new books to come in, I would have to take a look at the art and just let people know, okay, well, it's going to be printed on newsprint, so the colors have to get adjusted to account for that. With newsprint, and honestly, even with other paper stocks too, you really want to make sure that there's contrast there. You want to make sure that you don't have a dark color against another dark color. You know, so you're not going to see the difference in tones. Definitely not as much on newsprint. It's going to be difficult even on a premium paper stock, but that's something that I find a lot of modern coloring. It's kind of like there's a lack of understanding how to make images pop, and then combined with kind of we don't have as much inking involved anymore in comics, and I don't mean we at Alterna, but I mean we in general in the comic industry. Inking used to be the thing that, you know, so here you have a nice contrast on the image. It's got nice line art, and then you can easily color that. Usually the colors were not flats per se, but maybe 2 or 3 tones involved. And that's kind of how it would be printed. You know, comics were synonymous with being bright, colorful, artwork would pop. You know, certain colors for the background, you maybe would see just the whole background would be in a pink or in a blue or whatever would offset whatever was going on. It was rare when you would see everything colored accurately to represent the specific time of day or whatever it was. It was usually always the colors were about accentuating the emotion of whatever was occurring with the art. But somewhere along the lines, there was a lot of like mid-tones, there was a lot of pastels, there was a lot of coloring, not for the emotion of the scene anymore, but more about coloring for the accuracy of the scene or the time of day or whatever. And all that's great, but it kind of takes away one of the biggest tools that comics has, which is to really play up the art in a storytelling way, and to use the color in a huge way like that is very important. So when it comes to even coloring for newsprint, it's always best to look at it and go, okay, I want to stick to a truer version of the color. You don't want to muddy up things too much with black, because what happens is that it overtakes the ink, kind of the mix of the ink. So you don't want to have certain percentages in there that are leaning too heavily to being close to the color next to it. It's a lot of color theory stuff, but it's a lot of stuff that colorists should already be doing. And unfortunately, that kind of thing seems to be not as prevalent as it used to be.
Right. I think in the 90s, like, you know, Todd McFarlane, Spawn, Brian Pulido, I started to notice the blacks, a lot of blacks, a lot of dark, a lot of the comics seemed darker. And like you mentioned, the colors, you know, you didn't have bright yellows, reds, purples, pinks. It was all that faded colors. Is that just like the new style, like the 90s? They wanted it to be darker be grittier, or what do you?
Yeah, I mean, well, that kind of came about because they were starting to do digital coloring. You
Okay.
know, image was kind of leading the way with a lot of
Okay.
that at that point in time. And with the coloring that they were doing, image books, at least early on, were not printed on newsprint. They were printed on a grade a bit higher than newsprint. The paper was a bit sturdier. It could hold the darker colors a bit and not lose that contrast. Because you could print dark on newsprint, but you got to make sure that you're not printing the whole page too dark. Like, we'll still have books sometime when I see them get printed out, and I'm like, oh, we really should have adjusted that further, because there was too much darkness overall on the page. It
like,
needs
bleed
more
through,
contrast.
Does it bleed
Well,
through?
we'll make sure it doesn't bleed through, but on
Okay.
the page itself, it'll be hard sometimes to distinguish. Like, if the colorist, or in some spots, like if I don't catch it before it goes to print, because I try not, as much as possible, when it comes to other people's books that I publish, I try not to mess with things too much. I don't want certain things to end up getting ruined or something in the vision of the creator, because Alterna's creator owned. But when it comes to my books, I can kind of tinker as much as I want, because all I have to answer to really is me at that point. But so there's some books sometimes that print. There's some pages that'll print, and I noticed that, well, it would have really helped this page if the figures in the page were colored lighter than the really dark background. But sometimes the colorist will go in there and they want the color to reflect the location, the shadowing, etc., as opposed to understanding that, you can have a dark room. It doesn't mean that the characters, like, let's say they're in a pitch black room. Well, light-wise, they'd also have the characters pitch black. So unless you do something to kind of add drama, maybe you see their eyes or their teeth or whatever. But most of the time, the reader will understand that, okay, the rest of the room is colored very dark, even if the characters are not as bright as they would be in daylight, but they're still bright that you can see them. They'll understand that the room is still dark. But sometimes in modern comics, the coloring will lend itself more towards understanding that, okay, well, the shading of the room is dark, so the shading of the character should be dark. But what happens then when it prints is it doesn't really pick up. It doesn't look that great. You can't really see the figure. So
it blends in together, like blends in with the background.
Yeah. Think about it. We see it in movies a lot too. There's a lot of movies where it's dark. It doesn't necessarily mean that, like, the whole thing needs to be dark. You still need to see what's going on.
Well, that's what backlighting and, like, secondary lighting is for.
Exactly.
And I know in a lot of comics, like, whenever, because I love drawing black outfits on characters. I draw black leather. I love characters in black leather because my stuff is very medieval fantasy. I remember as a kid looking at comics in the good, in newsprint days, and I noticed they always had blue with black. There'd be a muscled thigh in all tight black outfit, and there'd be an outer light of blue, like a navy blue, like a deep blue, and then the black. And then they, like, the other side of the leg, they'd maybe have a white or a gray. But they always, like, highlighted a black figure. And I said, okay, well, I guess that's how we do it. And it works because, again, let's say you have a character in a long black trench coat, and he's got a black background. You've got to do something to outline that trench coat, because you'll just see, like, his face. Maybe his hand. So... Yeah, that's funny. Actually, let me get a question from the chat. Rick's, do you do many Comic Cons?
I used to. Not so much anymore. But I used to.
Why? Explain why don't you do one anymore?
Just don't like doing them.
Really?
Yeah, I've done a lot. I've done probably about 50 or so.
Wow.
And
really?
all over the country for the most part. At least, like, all over the like, maybe not as far as, like, the Midwest.
Okay.
But I didn't do anything on the West Coast. Okay. But I would find that there's a lot of stuff that goes on at Comic Cons behind the scenes in terms of booking a table, setting things up. You get there, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of variables at play. And then for me, in general, especially as a publisher for the longest time, if I did a show that was just even a weekend, just Saturday and Sunday, even if it was a local show, what happens is that I would end up losing about 2 weeks worth of work because it would take a few days to set up. It would take a few days to kind of decompress. Yeah. And in the middle of losing those few days, you also lose those days of work you need to get done. Yeah. So what happens is that it compounds, and now all of a sudden you're 2 weeks behind and playing catch up all the time. Same thing goes with when you're doing signings or anything like that. And the other thing too is the shows are incredibly expensive. And so unless I'm getting an invite, which would happen a lot, especially the last couple of years when I was doing shows, I would get invites, and most of the time I would turn some of them down. But they would want to comp the table, which was kind of them. Right. But it's one of those things that even if you're there, if the show is going slow, if there really isn't anybody there, you're wasting your time still, and you can't get your time back. So I like if I could just teleport to a show and everything's there. I like meeting the people and talking to the people about comics. But as far as all the other stuff, which is 90% of it, I don't like that very much. Okay. So I don't really do those types of shows. And at this point, it's one of those things too, and I don't want to go down a depressing road for the viewer. But there's an awful lot of stuff that's going on in comics where, I'd rather not be around some of it. Let's put it that way.
What are you talking about, Pete? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see anything like that at all. Yeah. That's I'm staying on the outer rim, so to speak. I've watched for at least 3 years. I didn't get in. I didn't even know about crowdfunding, all this YouTube, Twitter, indie comic stuff until about 2020. It was actually the pandemic where I kind of adapted and discovered all this stuff. And again, I try to remember top guys, I say, like you and others. And I don't like to name drop on this show. I don't want to get in trouble, or you know what I mean. But that was the one thing that was like what actually was the first thing I admired about you and respected is you have like zero drama. You don't deal with any drama at all. And if you were on a show and things would come up, sometimes you would just politely excuse yourself. And I'm like, that's cool.
Well, right? some would say otherwise because I don't look for drama. I don't like being involved in it because it's a time waster. But yeah, there were a lot of times where sometimes I would try to engage people in good faith, thinking that they were just confused. They heard something through the grapevine, or they misconstrued something, or oh, you were nice to that person who I don't like, and that must mean X, Y, and Z about you or whatever. Right. I try to be nice and friendly to everybody who's nice and friendly to me. I give respect when people give respect to me, and if they don't respect me, it's like, okay, well, have a good day, because all I'm doing is wasting my own time if I absorb myself in it. But there was a time where I found myself in a lot of it because of the fact that I just thought that, well, maybe I can clear this up, and I've found over time that there is no clearing things up for many people who kind of come at you in that way. They're usually trying to get a rise out of you, or they just want to say their piece and kind of walk away, or worse, use you to maybe get more attention for themselves or however it may be. So I'm not exactly quiet about a lot of the things in the industry that I am upset about or that I care about. And that's the only reason that I ever have been upset about them is because I care. If I didn't care at all, I wouldn't even say anything about any of it. But the whole thing with drama that I find, people kind of going at it with each other, it's depressing to me because I feel like there's, no matter what the situation is, there's a tremendous amount of talented people out there, and they're hardworking when it comes to being creators and other aspects of this business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a shame to see people put so much time and energy into the things that aren't advancing and furthering any of what they could do. Like, their talents are better served elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And that's the part to me that I find is so depressing when I see nonstop kind of bickering back and forth and pettiness and whatever it is. And because people are talented and our time is limited. And it's unfortunate that people do that. I'm not going to tell them what to do with their time, but I see it and I go, man, this person's talented. I wish they would kind of concentrate more on those things, because one day they're going to look back and go, the X amount of hours or days or whatever it is that I wasted on these things, I could have used that towards all these other things that I wanted to do, and I just didn't get to do it. And that's the part to me that I find to be sad. So I try not to kind of get into a lot of that, because time is precious, and I don't want to waste that.
Right. Okay. Richard Petmeyer just backed your, let's see here, IndieGoGo campaign, just supported it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
So you got one more backer there. See, I told you this wasn't a total waste of your time, Pete.
Well, as long as you have a good conversation, it's never a waste of time.
Yeah, I'm all about just a conversation, and I think, I don't know if you've noticed it, but a lot of indie creators just want to talk, and I almost feel sadness, because I think it's almost like people aren't getting enough attention. I've had a few people on this show, and we will talk for hours, and it's just like, and it's not just like, hanging out talk, like, oh, you see that game last night. It's about, indie comics or entertainment or whatever. And I think, I don't know now, you tell me, because you are more involved in this than I am, but it seems to me there's like a lack, a shortage of quality live streams. I remember about maybe 2-3 years ago in the indie comic scene, with the crowdfunding and everything, it seemed there was a lot of shows where, new independent creators were going on and getting their work, out in the open. And it seems to me, at least, and a few people I talked to on Twitter said the same thing. Like, especially like the last 6 months or so, it's really kind of died down. And have you noticed it? But see, you're with Alterna, so you have kind of your own like kingdom all set up. So you don't really.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I encourage everybody to do. So if anybody sees, and the same thing goes to creating. So if you see that there's no books out there for you, right? Try creating a book that you would like to see. What is it that you would like to see out in the world, and try your best to create that, or encourage it if you find someone else that's doing it. As far as like live streams or anything like that, or YouTube shows or whatever that may be, I mean, there's a lot of context, I think, behind why a bunch of those sort of things don't happen, or don't seem maybe to happen as much as they used to. Okay. And it's one of those things where I think, and I definitely understand where people are coming from, because I kind of notice it here and there. Okay. But I also think, well, I remember all the times when like a lot of new creators were coming around, and they were getting more promotion. Right. But a lot of those creators maybe had projects that ended up either not getting fulfilled or being fulfilled, and the results were less than adequate. I remember a lot of different creators kind of coming around, and they would want promotion on various channels, and people were more than welcome to do so. And they would hope that those creators would then in turn be inspired to do the same sort of thing, create their own channels where they would also, kind of carry the torch and then promote others too.
Right.
And sometimes, more often than not, that wouldn't happen. So, it was one of those things where it became like this weird funneling to certain individuals where you go, well, that's just, why should I build up a channel? Why should I make my own videos? I'll just ask these people who've already done that kind of work, and then I'll be on their channel and I'll get their audience, and their audience will buy my book.
Right.
And that's why I don't like being on shows where the whole show is just talking about the campaign or the perks, buy this, buy that.
Right.
Even when I have my shows on my own channel, and we've done over 200 episodes of Comic Book Radio, maybe we'll look at a campaign or something like that for 10 minutes or something out of like the hour or 2 hours that I'm talking to them. I want to know what the creative philosophy is, why this person is doing what they're doing, what are their experiences, all that kind of stuff. And I find that that's also what people want to know too, because that goes more into backing somebody, because let's face it, you're backing a person as opposed to backing just the project they're working on. You want to kind of know that they're competent at the very least in what they're doing, and you can't get to know that if it's just an infomercial for an hour. You got to hear them talk about, why are they doing this to begin with? Because if you're just doing this for attention or money or this or that, it's not going to last. And I've been around long enough. I've been making comics for 18 years. I've been around long enough to see a lot of people come and go that have had that mindset. It became before the story and the character and making a good quality comic for the reader. It became more about maybe using this as a tool to get a Hollywood deal, or using this for attention in some kind of realm of whatever. Comics was always like a stepping stone, and those people didn't really seem to last as long as the people who put the craft before everything. Because that's the thing, is the outcome of putting the craft before everything else means that you might actually get that deal or the money or the attention or the fame or whatever. But that's a byproduct. That shouldn't be the goal. The goal shouldn't be those things. The goal should be to make the best possible story, the best possible comic you could possibly make, and hope that it really entertains and maybe even enriches the life of the reader who spends time with it. Because again, like I said before, time is precious. So, people can throw a couple bucks at you, but if they read it and go, man, that was a waste of my time, I'm not getting that time back. And we've all been there, whether it was a comic or a movie or a show or whatever. And you sit there and go, oh, I'm never getting those 2 hours back, or whatever it was that you were doing, because it just was so not worthy of, you could have done whatever else with your time, So it's that kind of thing that I think is so important to when you're communicating to backers, when you're communicating just in general, when you've got a channel, whatever it may be. And I hope you stick with building up your own channel too. Because every person who is at, 1 million subscribers or whatever it is, started off with none at one point. You got to stick with it. You got to find what works for you. And you got to then embrace that and go, okay, well, as long as I'm being true to myself, as long as what I want to talk about, I'm being sincere about it. Because I think if you look to someone else and go, oh, they're doing really good, I should make videos like what they do. But do you want to make videos like that? Or, do you want to talk about those things or not? So if you do, great. If you don't, what is it that you do want to talk about? What is it that means something to you? And then go in that direction. It's the same thing with storytelling too.
So I just, again, so that's important. And to anyone who watches this show, who is like an indie creator, and there's a few that watch the show. Again, you're stressing the importance of the story you're telling, the product you're making, the art you're creating, not the other crap, not the clickbait, not the hate streaming, not the I mean, it's like the love of the love of the craft. That's what's most important.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm not someone who likes to tell people what they should or shouldn't talk about. So that's something there. where again, I'm more like I'll notice something and I go, well, I like that. I want to try to do more of that or talk about that. Or I go, I don't really like that. Doesn't really feel good to talk about that or to be in that state of mind. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not really someone who's like going to go out there and say, hey, everybody, you should talk more about this. You should talk more about that. You should, like I might express like, yeah, I wish we could see more of this and maybe less of that. But I'm not going to go and say, hey, you over there with that channel and you just did that video. Why would you do that? Why didn't you do this other thing instead? That's just really not my style.
Right.
And maybe once in a blue moon, I'll express, some kind of desire to see more positivity. I kind of tweeted about that, I don't know, a week ago, saying that, I'd like to see more people lift each other up and less people tear each other down.
Right.
And that it's in indie comics, but it's in everything. I think we're all exposed to more than enough negativity and unhappiness on a daily basis. And why do we need to add to that? There's so many things that, and you could be perfectly aware and address a lot of issues, but in a positive way. We should be working towards solutions because they're there. But the more that we point and go, okay, so-and-so is doing this wrong, so-and-so is doing this bad. Okay, that's valid, but it's never going to get any better if we don't take what we've learned from maybe someone else's misstep and say, let's apply that to what we're doing and not make those same mistakes. If we just constantly expect the person who's making the mistake, that if we just criticize them more and more and more, they'll eventually not make the mistake. That's not going to do anything because usually that's not how people work. The more that you tell someone that they're doing it wrong or you don't like what they're doing or whatever, they're either going to tune you out or they're going to double down and continue to do that to spite you. So if you want to see an actual change, and it goes for everything. That's why we left distribution too. Wasn't happy in the distribution system. And I said, well, why should I keep fighting the system? Instead, build something else that works and then utilize that. So direct selling works. Direct selling on our site works. Direct crowdfunding works for us. It's less stressful. It's not perfect. It might not be for everybody. There's different things you got to learn. But, you got to do that. You got to set up something else.
When you said direct crowdfunding, what do you mean by direct crowdfunding?
Well, anything that's directly to the customer is direct.
Okay.
Whereas one could say that the distribution system in comics, because it's so predicated on pre-ordering with retailers, you could kind of say that that's crowdfunding because you're expecting your orders to come in from the retailers and then from also customers that are placing their pre-order with the retailer. It's a similar, albeit very kind of more convoluted and complicated system, and it's kind of archaic with the way that a lot of it works. But with taking the middlemen out of the equation, the distributor, the retailer, that kind of a thing, you can go direct to the consumer instead. So instead of saying, I'm going to go online to promote that my book is in comic shops, it's in the previews catalog, you got to use this order code, you got to tell the comic shop about it, and then in 2 months or so, the book will come in. But we're only going to be able to do that and make that possible if we hit a certain benchmark or a goal. And the distributor has benchmarks where if you don't hit certain ones or you don't meet them X amount of times, books get canceled. Publishers will even be delisted from the distributor. So it's very much like crowdfunding, but not with the same energy or intimacy. Like, you're at arm's length every step of the way. Because believe it or not, you're not encouraged necessarily to try to get customers to the comic shop and get them to order your book. You're encouraged to talk to the retailer to order your book, and the retailer is supposed to then talk to the customer. But what happens is time and time again, when you're trying to get your book to the retailer and you talk to the retailer, you go, well, no customers are coming in here to order this. Why should we get any for the store? So you see the catch-22 that you end up in. The distributor doesn't really want you to deal with the retailer either, though, because the more you deal with the retailer and build relationships with them, the less you eventually would need the distributor.
Yeah.
Because everybody takes a cut along the way. The distributor takes about 15%. The retailer takes about 35 to 40 or 45, depending on what the terms are. So you'll find yourself doing 3 times as much work for a third of the money instead of selling direct. Whereas if you sold direct, let's say you go online, you promote, you send out your newsletter, whatever it may be, which is usually the best way that people do these things. They'll say, okay, here's the book. You go to the comic shop, you pre-order. Instead, you could say, here's the book. Here's the link. You pre-order it right now. There's a very different, you just cut a whole bunch of steps. And then you throw into the equation, which is something that we were really dealing with a lot towards the end. Customers would go to the store. They'd try to pre-order the book. The comic shop would not want to pre-order the book for whatever reason. So whether it was we were indie, they didn't know about us, or they did know about us, but they heard bad things from someone on Twitter or whatever.
Oh, God. Jesus.
You know, so we were getting a lot of retail boycotts as well towards the end. We also got boycotted by retailers when we went to newsstand. And I thought that was a really confusing move because around maybe I'd say late 2017, we brokered a deal with a newsstand distributor to get books onto newsstands in Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and a whole bunch of other retailers and smaller newsstand agents across the world. And comic shops did not like that. And now, what I don't get about it was this. I explained to them, the ones that had a problem with it, at least were vocal with me. I said, what's happening here is our books get released, and then 2 months later, the same issue goes to the newsstand. So the comic shop gets it 2 months before the newsstand. But the thing is, our books were on a 2-month release schedule. So if the comic shop got issue 1, 2 months later, the newsstand would get issue 1. But in those 2 months, when issue 1 was at the newsstand, issue 2 would be at the comic shop. So if you were at the newsstand and discovered issue 1, we had a back cover ad. We used a back cover on all the news. Instead of selling that ad space, we used it to say, go to the comic shop locator and find a local comic shop near you to pick up the next issue. And I would explain that to the retailers, and they were still upset about it and said that we're not carrying. And I said, okay, you don't have anything in your store then that is sold anywhere else?
Wow.
So this is the kind of industry that I was dealing with, which is why I felt it made no sense. It made no sense to stay in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've never been happier. Since 2020, we left in April 2020, right around the time of the pandemic starting and Diamond saying that they weren't going to pay anybody for about 8 or 9 months.
Wow.
And I said, well, if we don't get paid for 8 or 9 months on our books and we have to sit there and wait to get distributed again, we're not going to be around in 8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
So instead I said, you know what? They're effectively gone anyway. Let's just leave. That's it. And we just go full force into selling direct. And we had started selling direct because Diamond and the system that they created, we lost about 16,000 or so reorders over 2 years.
Wow.
Their system, reorders would auto cancel after a month. So I would be begging on a monthly basis. We've got 200 books here. Can we please get a purchase order? Because you can't send them in. If you send in the books, even though you can see it on the site, if you send in the books, they'll throw them out and they'll fine you $150 per infraction.
Jesus.
So, yeah. So even though they need the books, because they got to go to the retailer, the whole system is screwy. They'll still do that. You know, they won't go like, oh, good for you being proactive about that. Thanks for sending. They'll go, nope, don't do that again. $150 fine. And we threw out those books and you're not also going to get that purchase order. So there was a couple times I was able to finagle them to actually get a purchase order going with us. But more often than not, I would see just, 100 here, 200 there, 50 there. I would see all of them disappear and just, that's it. And then what happens is with retailers, we end up also looking like we're just not following up because they've got these customers coming in, books sell out on day one. And I've got more than enough here. I'm sitting here going, okay, we printed, an extra 1,000 or 2 and we got enough to get reorders going. And I would see them come in. I would see the orders piling up. On one of them, it was like 450 or something, I think, on like Blood Realm #1. On day one, they oversold everything, and then 450 or so reorders came in, and they were in back order. And I figured like, oh, great, this is a hit.
Yeah.
You were going to get that purchase order soon.
Mm-hmm.
We never did. And I was like, why? What happened? And then you see on eBay people buying them for like $8 to $10 a piece, a book that's $1.50. And meanwhile, I'm sitting on like 1,000 here going, this doesn't need to happen. I've got books ready to go. But the distributor is not issuing a purchase order. And if they don't issue the purchase order, we don't ship the books. And if we don't ship the books, we don't make money. The retailer doesn't make money, and the reader doesn't get their book. So that's when we started selling direct. And that's when we started setting up our own stuff. And after 2 years or so of doing that and getting better and better at it, we eventually started making more money selling direct than we did selling through to Diamond. So by the time April 2020 rolled around, it was no question. It was a very easy decision to just say, let's leave the distributor.
Yeah. Wow. That dude, I got a headache just hearing about that. I couldn't even imagine dealing with that. That's like a nightmare,
and
dude.
it's tough when you're dealing with that too, to be in a creative headspace, which is why for years I just couldn't really be in one. There was a time for 2 years where I didn't even draw.
Jesus. Just for real?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ,
because it was just constant administrative level stuff. And Alterna is not a huge company. Alterna is pretty much just me with a bunch of other independent creators. But we had like 20 or so books out at a time, any given like month to 3 months. And dealing with the constant everything between all the distributors, all the retailers, and then once like drama within the industry really cranked up to 11, it became practically impossible to do anything creative.
I admire you for not getting out altogether, man. I would have said, screw this. I'll go back to bartending or something. I don't know. That sounds like a mess.
I would strongly encourage everybody and anybody today getting into comics, stay independent, stay on the path of just working directly with your readers, continue to build up however possible, utilize whatever social media you feel comfortable with, get a newsletter going, and get your own website going and sell direct. Don't even think about distribution. The distribution system is not a healthy one. It's the opposite of what you would see. Like, let's say on a crowdfunder, you see a lot of guys that could do very well. Maybe they even hit 6 figures on a campaign. Right. I guarantee you, if they went through distribution with the same book and didn't go through crowdfunding, they would have made 10% of what they would have made on that crowdfunder. There's probably, I'd say, 80% of the independent comics that are getting distributed right now, they're not even making back their money to create them. I mean, we definitely weren't. And I would see the sales numbers from other publishers, and I'm like, there's no way. They have higher overhead costs than we do on these books. Between the printing and the creation, there's no way. And sometimes they'd be selling far less than what we were selling. And so it's a strange industry. The footprint on distribution has collapsed about 2,700 stores from the time we got in there in 2008 to the time we left in 2020. And it never grew. It never grew. It's strange. And if anything, you figure that comics would be booming. They'd be everywhere and anywhere, And if you were the only distributor, they're not anymore, but for a time, Diamond was like the only distributor in town. That's tremendous clout, and you don't got to go in there and tell, like, I don't know, Walmart and say, here's the previews catalog, give us your order, and then we'll send you comics. Don't handle it like that. You go into a big distributor like that with retail and all those connections and avenues, and you say, here are the top 10 comics that sell. We're going to give you those every month. That's what's going to sell. That's what's going to go to the store. And that could just be Marvel and DC. That's fine. It doesn't have to be independent. It doesn't have to be Alterna. It doesn't have to be anybody else. It could just be the top 10 issues that sell every month. And that goes to the bigger retail outlets. And what happens with that is that you create this atmosphere where people go, oh, they still make new comics. So if you don't see the product anymore, imagine, for instance, there's a peanut butter store. All you can do to get peanut butter anymore is go to your local peanut butter shop to get peanut butter. There's no peanut butter in the grocery store. There's no peanut butter anywhere else, just at your local peanut butter shop. and you're lucky if you've got one within an hour driving distance from you. How many jars of peanut butter do you think the average person is going to be eating?
Right.
And that's comics.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why crowdfunding is like.
And that's why crowdfunding, because so many
well.
people, it's kind of created this perfect storm because so many people have this accessibility to the internet and shopping online at this point.
Right.
They're used to it and they're comfortable with it. That as long as, that product, that creator, that kind of thing, whatever looks good to them, they can go in there and back it and help make it come to life.
Right.
And there's never been anything like that before. That was just cutting out everybody in between, going straight to the customer. And the same thing for like what we do when we sell direct. Mm-hmm. That was something that was far more difficult 15 or so years ago. Right. But now it's not considered a strange thing. As long as your site looks functional, it looks great, you can actually use it, you can see everything clearly, you can read it. As long as it looks trustworthy, people will shop on there. Right. Even people that are like, oh, well, you need a physical store and this and that. And it's like, well, the largest retailers on the planet are not physical stores at this point. Yeah. So things have shifted. And because of that, it's created this perfect storm of where people are online, they're used to buying online. And as long as you find a way to tap into that audience, you can have much greater success. And I know it sounds weird. It sounds weird to say it because you should have a lot more success going through a distributor that has access to even 1,000 stores. Right. But you don't, because of those 1,000 stores, I'd say probably 10 to 15% are going to order anything outside of the mainstream. And so if you're only really getting into 100 to 150 stores, you're going to have to hope that they're ordering big to survive. Right. Otherwise, you're going to come up with gimmicks. And we've seen those gimmicks over the years. We've seen them even with the bigger publishers because they can't survive on just making one issue. Right. You got to go out there and you got to have the variant covers. You got to have them incentivized. You got to have all these little schemes that inflate the numbers so that an issue that's maybe got only 15,000 readers, it looks like it's selling to 60,000 because of all the covers involved and everything else. But those 60,000 copies are going to retail, and the sell-through is far less. And that's already been something that's been talked about and documented throughout the whole industry for years now. It's not like it was before where, you would have at most maybe four variants, like X-Men #1, Jim Lee. Right. You have 4 variants and maybe 5 if you count the special edition one that they did. And then that sold into the millions, almost 10 million copies. But now you're seeing books that they're struggling to hit 50,000, and they'll have all these variants and they'll have all these other things, and there'll be a character and a company that they're known. Yeah. And they're struggling still. And the big reason for that is because there's a lack of a footprint with distribution, and on top of it, it's a 1-2 punch. There's a lack of actual quality storytelling involved. So it's a strange market. That's why I would say anybody getting involved today, especially if I was getting involved today, I would not, and if I had the knowledge that I have now, I would not go down the road of distribution and retail. I would stay direct.
And would you start off crowdfunding? Because that's
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Because like Alterna, I mean, man, you need a lot of people in order to have a platform function. Like you have to have a lot of constant customers who trust you and who are loyal, as opposed to just coming in and saying, "Hey, I got a website." You know what I mean? It's like, well, who are you?
Everything's going to take time. So that should be a given already. Don't expect overnight success, anything like that. The whole old adage of you're a 10-year overnight success. You're going to be working your butt off, but you'd rather be working your butt off for yourself.
Exactly.
And keep everything you make, retain the rights to what you have, all that kind of stuff. Like if you sign with a publisher, make sure you retain your rights. I can't tell you how many horror stories, even among independent publishers, who want even like half of the rights. And when it comes time to that independent publisher to say, okay, let's end the contract, or something else even worse happens at the publisher, maybe they implode, it becomes a legal nightmare to get the remaining 50% back. Ugh. So Alterna is 100% creator owned. If we have creators that leave, whether a book gets canceled or they leave on their own. The majority of the books they ended their run, and the creator just boom right there. Okay, no problem. It's yours. You go do whatever you got to do with it. I'm not fighting for a second about the creative rights on the books.
Right.
So we don't own anything as far as the characters go. Alterna doesn't even own my characters. Alterna is like a separate entity from my creations. So Alterna doesn't own anything. It's a lot like the way Image Comics works with that respect.
Gotcha.
So, when it comes to stuff like that, though, people also have to be aware that whether you're doing it independent or you're going with a publisher that's creator-owned, you have to also be aware that means that you're still going to have to be the voice and the face of your brand, of your comic, of your characters. So you still got to get out there and let people know. You still got to talk about it. You still got to let people know about it. And you got to find whatever avenue works for you. But that's something, too, where I find that, because you got to do all this anyway, even if you go down distribution. But the return is greater and it's more sustainable in the long run if you stick to doing it yourself than going down distribution and retail. And that's been proven time and again. Because even some people will go, well, look at Image Comics. Let's look at, Todd McFarlane. Well, Todd McFarlane, I guarantee you, would be making more money at this point, especially if he just went on his own and didn't have any distributor. And all they did was hire like a small group of people to ship out the books. You can order everything direct from Todd. He already has experimented and has had a lot of success doing crowdfunding at this point. So he's already kind of seeing the benefits of going and selling direct. And I guarantee the same thing would be true if every single publisher did that. If every single artist, writer, creator, whatever it is, if they all did that and went direct, they would actually notice that they would make more, be less stressed, and actually have a more sustainable career going direct than working within the realm of a failing distribution system. Because one of the biggest things I noticed when I was talking to retailers a lot of the time, they wanted products that sold themselves. And I get that. I get why you'd want that. But this isn't 1992. So in 2024, if you want a product that sells itself, you could just say, okay, well, why am I giving you 65%? This sells itself. I can just sell it direct.
That's insane. I didn't know the complexity of this whole distribution. I knew about Diamond. Actually, we met at a Comic-Con here in Raleigh. I met a Diamond agent, and we looked into it, and it was they promote zero. It's all, and I'm like, I need to promote it. I'm looking for promoters because I'm a nobody. I'm starting. I'm like, I need someone to.
And the best that they'll do for you is if you could pay for an ad, which is going to cost you a lot of money. Or you, if you get really lucky, they might throw a spotlight at you. But if anybody goes to like their social media pages, or you go to their YouTube, you'll see that no one pays attention to anything they say. So if you go to their YouTube, you'll see that you're saying you're just starting off and you're really rough with this stuff. You'll see that you have a lot more views on your videos than they do on theirs.
Jesus.
And so, like I said, the industry is strange. So you want to make sure when you're going about this as an independent, first and foremost, put character and story ahead of everything else. Work on your craft. You're going to constantly always be working on your craft, and you should want to.
Improving.
You should want to. That should be where the love and the passion is for this stuff. But when it comes to everything else, when it comes to the business stuff, when it comes to selling, when it comes to all of that, I strongly would encourage stay independent with that too. Don't look over and say the grass is greener, and because I did at one point, and I said, we're selling like 200 or 300 an issue on print on demand. If we go to distribution, we'll sell 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 because their footprint is so much bigger. At the time when we got with Diamond in 2008, it was 4,200 stores. When we left, it was like 1,700. So, you figure, okay, well, we could do that. We'll be a huge success if we go with distribution. So it was really great when we got picked up. And then the numbers come in, and I'm like, we sell more direct than we did with Diamond that first outing. And I was like, we went through Diamond distribution with a book that we went back to print with 4 times and sold like 500 copies print on demand. It was a graphic novel called Birth, and by Michael S. Bracco, really kind of really great storytelling, solid storytelling about these 2 different cultures that were warring, these like alien races, and they're the last of both civilizations. The 2 of them that are left, they fall in love and create a child, and the answer to all their questions was them just getting along to begin with instead of killing each other. But now it's too late. Now it's too late. They're gone, and there's just a baby that's left and has no idea of its past, its world, anything of where it came from. And that book spawned a series that he did called Novo, and that ended with volume 5. But we figured that, okay, so we sold like 500 or so print on demand. We could probably sell 3,000 or 4,000 through Diamond. And we sold, I think, like 250 or 260 to Diamond. And that was a rude awakening. And at that point, it was just a matter of like, okay, well, how many times can I lie to myself about what we're going to be doing here and the success that we'll have? And I lied to myself with it for about 10 years until it just was like, enough was enough, I mean, we had books in there that, like, we had a free comic book day book that sold like 40,000 units, and I thought that we would have seen an uptick in sales, and we never did. No matter what we did, we had like a New York Times bestseller, we had a book that got adapted to film, we had multiple free comic book day books. Nothing seemed to make the numbers go up.
Wow.
Between the retail system and Diamond. Like, we were just stuck where we were. And every now and then we'd see an outlier of a book having some more success than others, but it wasn't anything that was like a clear runaway hit. And it was great to at least be able to get out there and have our books in stores and whatever. But I find that that's kind of like this weird badge of honor a lot of people in comics, especially in independent comics, have, where they're like, they go to the store and they're like, there's my book, it's on the shelf.
Right.
And I get that. Yeah, and I get that point of pride. But I had it at one point too, but after a while, eventually, you go back in a month or 2 or 3 or 4, and you're like, there's my book. It's on the shelf.
Still sitting on the shelf. It sure looks good. Let me get a picture.
You're like, sure rather someone have that book.
Right.
So that's something else, is that even though we would sell whatever through the comic shop, it was no guarantee that it was getting to a reader. Yeah. But every single time now when we sell a book, it's a great feeling knowing that it's going right to a reader.
Right. And anywhere in the world. And that's, to me, the key, man. That's why I didn't really bother to even look into having a book in a comic shop. Because, okay, you say you have that comic shop in the middle of Raleigh. Okay, woo. So how many people are going to see that book? As opposed to like when you're crowdfunding. And a woman in Berlin, Germany, last year, my first campaign, loved it, sent it to her, and we are like becoming closer. Now she's doing voice acting for my trailers, and she's working on a video where she's playing one of the characters in the book, dude. I mean, I'm a nobody. You don't know who the hell I am, and most people don't know who that. But the people I've made just that met through crowdfunding, like Kyle, he lives in London, the UK. Same thing. He got my book last week, and he on Sunday night show, we're gonna review my book. It'll be the first time on video someone's actually read the book. So for me, it's a big deal. UK and Berlin, how the hell are they gonna find your book in Raleigh? You see what I'm saying? That's the ingenious of the internet that I say it all the time, man. People, it's a double-edged, it is a powerful weapon, and it's double-edged. As we've seen, the internet can destroy people. It can kill people. Don't need to name drops names, but there was someone in the comic industry who died a little while ago. Everyone knows about it. I was talking about it. Right? And, but it can be a powerful tool because someone in Afghanistan, for Christ's sakes, can watch your book. As long as you can, figure out a way to ship it to them somewhat affordably, and that's a problem. And a lot of people, this issue, overseas, Europe, etc. Australia's a nightmare. I haven't shipped to Australia. I don't think I want to ship to Australia.
It's
London,
not too bad, but it's expensive.
It's more than to London and Berlin. London and Berlin is what I have so far. Maybe someone in Scotland, but I'll see. But the point is, because of the internet and crowdfunding, those people I know now we talk every week. I would have never known them if it wasn't for what we have, which is the internet and crowdfunding. If it was just local comic shops, okay, well, I know other North Carolinians, great.
Yeah.
So that's what's huge to me. And people, I don't know what, I'm assuming you're a Gen Xer. I don't know, maybe you're not, maybe you're younger. I'm a Gen Xer. I've got the beauty of living in both worlds because when I was younger, there was no internet. There was none of this. I wouldn't even attempt to do this back then. All of a sudden, the internet comes along. We're old enough. We're like, this is really cool. And so we learned it and keeping up with it. Here I are. I know both worlds, right? This is insane. The fact that you're like Northeast somewhere. You're many states away from me. And basically for free, here you and I are hanging out like we're hanging out in a bar together, live. This isn't delayed. This is live. Even that I still appreciate to this day, and most people don't. It's just internet. Smartphones. It's like, you guys have no clue. 20 years ago, this is like magic now.
Yeah.
And because of that, independent creators like myself and all the other tens of thousands of men and women can get their work out there to people who would have never, ever seen it. That's huge, if you ask me.
Oh, absolutely. And it's leveled the playing field, but with that, the barrier to entry is so low now, if not non-existent, that people have to understand that you got to find a way to cut through the noise.
Yeah.
So, you got to view it as like, well, before we'll compare it to a Comic-Con. Let's say that there's a Comic-Con that it's a really great show, but not a lot of people go there in terms of exhibiting their stuff, but people are going there to get comics. So it's just maybe 10 of you, and you guys are making a killing.
Right.
Now, eventually, the word gets out. Now, there's more creators next year. Now, there's 30 creators. You're like, crowd's good. It's a little bigger. Not doing as bad. I'm still doing pretty good. The next year after that, there's 100 creators. The crowd has only increased a little bit more. Right. And you're noticing, what I was doing the last 2 years, the show was great. Now what's happened? I'm not making as much as I was before.
Right.
So you got to find a way to stand out. You got to find a way to cut through the noise, and you got to find a way to do that. But, there's a lot of areas that people can do that with too and become proficient with, but it means that now you can't just be the person who I've seen people go, I just want to make my comic. Why can't I just make my comic and then it sells? The thing is that nothing ever has ever been that way. So before, you used to have to invest in like a big advertising firm that could, come and help you with a promotional campaign, and you sunk in a lot of money and a lot of time and just hope that worked out.
Billboards on the highway.
Yeah, nothing ever was just, why can't I just make this and then it sells itself? Right. And I've seen a lot of independent creators do that kind of a thing. I don't want to have a YouTube, or I don't want to talk about it on social media, or I don't want to make a newsletter or a website. Well, if you don't want to do any of those things that you need to do to support the thing that you're making, then you do have to then curb your expectations. Right. You do have to understand that, well, maybe you'll never make a living off of making your comic. If it's just enough for you to make your comic and you just want to get it out there, that's fine too. But at that point in time, don't sit there and be jealous of someone else who does all those things, works hard at it, and then has success and is making more than you or getting more appreciation. Even if yours is better, yours might be better. But the thing is, you're not putting effort in the same spot that the other individual is putting theirs in. Right. So their stuff, their book might be crappy, but their marketing and their website and their enthusiasm and their outreach might be vastly superior than yours. Right. Well, law of averages, they're going to make more than you. Yeah. So if you're not letting people know that you're doing what it is that you're doing, how could you expect them to understand that you're making that comic and that they should purchase it from you or whatever, you know? So everyone's got to kind of find where they fit in with certain things and still true to themselves. But you do have to understand that, like any other business, you still have to kind of get out there and talk about it. And you're going to be having to maybe get a little uncomfortable as you learn new skill sets. But that's important. That's important. You know, so it's just one of those things. It's a fact of life. And don't get jealous. If anything, see what that person's doing. See if can you learn anything from them. I guarantee you could, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes if you just shut up, watch, and listen, you can get an education. That's what I'm doing. I'm constantly watching other streams and stuff, just trying to learn what I can and then apply it to my own thing. So
absolutely.
Real quick switch. Do you ever do you ever listen to Coast AM on the radio? That show?
Oh, yeah. Every now and then. More when Art Bell was hosting, less with
yes,
George
I was going to say, I've kind of stopped listening to it recently because it's starting to get a little too boring for me. But I listened to it back in the Art Bell days, and it was much better than George Norrie. But they talk a lot about cryptids, big time. And I forget her name, but it's like it used to be every Sunday night. The host was this woman, and dude, she was obsessed with Sasquatch and Bigfoot. Like in reality, she goes to the woods and hunts them down. All this, you know, but she's like the friendly, you know, she wants to talk with them and all this stuff. Did you ever listen to any of that stuff?
No, I haven't heard any of that.
Dude, you may want to check out. I think it should be Sunday nights, coast to coast. And I tell you what,
still today.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into this. I'll DM you on Twitter. Her name, Connie. I think it's Connie Willis. In fact, she has a Twitter account. Connie Willis. But I'll send you the info anyways in the DM. I found her on Twitter. Unfortunately, she doesn't use Twitter that much. But she is all about cryptids and especially Sasquatch. And I believe it's every Sunday night. So if you are bored or free on Sunday nights, you should try to listen to Coast, because I think you would love it because of your whole
very nice
fascination with cryptids.
Yeah, on Saturday on my show, I'm going to have Brett Eichenberger on, and he did a documentary called Flash of Beauty. It's about Bigfoot.
Okay.
So I'll be talking to him about his experience getting that together. I wonder if he actually had any kind of sighting. Sometimes these people, they put this stuff together and they never actually had an encounter or a sighting, but they're very curious about talking to people who have.
Connie Willis supposedly has had more than one run-in and evidence and the structures in the woods. You know what I mean? But again, she focuses on Sasquatch, like, you know, Wendigo and Yetis and stuff. She's not really into that. It's mostly just the Sasquatch. And I know that, you know, cryptids, a lot of people don't even know what cryptids are, but they're actually, you know, there's quite a few, you know, between Jersey Devil and, you know, Mothman and a lot. Well, and so
we've had real cryptids, you know, like all a cryptid really is just an undocumented, unclassified species of life.
Yeah.
You know, and we've had like the giant panda was a cryptid. The mountain gorilla was a cryptid. People didn't really know any of these things. They didn't have a body. They didn't, you know, I think the mountain gorilla was like 1907 or something like that. You know, giant panda around the same sort of time. You know, you would hear sounds, you would see something, but you know, if you describe, like, I think I saw this big black and white bear in the woods, you know, before a panda came along, you'd be like, yeah, whatever, you know, a little bit of, you know, too much, you know, black and white bear, okay, you know, but it's one of those things that eventually there's these life forms that get discovered and classified. But that's why it's so interesting with some of this, because there's cryptids that are like folklore, kind of more like mythic creatures, but like then there's
Wendigo, Wendigo's that?
Yeah. You know, and then there's the cryptids that are just like, you don't know what the heck that is. It doesn't look like anything familiar to you or to anyone else. But what is it? Is it an experiment? Is it a new species? Is it something else entirely? You know, so all that stuff, it's just so interesting to me.
Do you believe in cryptids? Do you think they're real? They exist?
I think a bunch of them are. I think some of them, I'd be shocked if they were. But I think that no matter what, I think people are seeing something, whether it's unexplained or a cryptid or whatever, remains to be seen. But I think that there absolutely is there's species of life on this planet that we just don't know of still. I mean, they're discovering new species every day.
Right.
You know, and sometimes it's like small little guys, you know, like a new
Little
frog
frogs.
or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. But like other times it's something else, or that maybe they don't exist now, but they find some kind of evidence that the life form did exist at one point. I mean, there's tons of Earth that we haven't explored, and then when it comes to the oceans in particular, there's a ton of that. So you know, there's definitely stuff that we just don't know about.
Right.
And at this point in time, if they were to exist and we still don't know about them, and they're a larger life form, that's probably because they got really good at hiding.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's like, and you must follow UFO alien news as well. Yes or no?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Because
all of that stuff.
That's ramped up. And you know what's really cool is, especially like I would say in the last like 5 to 10 years, underwater submersible UFOs, the underwater UFOs. Underwater UFOs. When I was growing up, it was just in the sky and crop circles and stuff. But then about 10 or so years ago, all of a sudden you start hearing these stories of UFOs coming out of the ocean. They're going in the ocean, and it's just like there's something going on, man. There's something going on. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're an idiot to think there's nothing going on.
And the thing is, no matter what it is, like let's say none of it is extraterrestrial. Let's say all of it is stuff that's here.
Right.
You know, it's still like, well, why the secrecy? Why
why are they hiding?
Yeah. Why not just the secrecy, but also why the probably billions at this point of dollars put into various projects, claiming to research these things. You know, so no matter what, it's a disturbing thing of like, well, okay, if we are trying to understand what these life forms or these machines are or whatever, and they're not of this earth, and it's conclusive that they aren't of this earth, and what are they? But then if they are of this earth and the whole thing is like a smokescreen, well, a smokescreen and a distraction from what? Like that I honestly think is even more disturbing than if they actually were all just extraterrestrials that are an advanced civilization and they found a way to get here with some kind of a wormhole or whatever. That's a far more less scary option to me. I know some people are like, oh my God, but it's so scary because if they're here, well, you know, chances are we're not alone in the universe, and chances are we're not even close to the most advanced life form in the entirety of the universe.
Right.
So the species is 1,000 or 1,000,000 years older than us, and they're more advanced. They probably got there not from being necessarily warlike, because you would kill each other out, but probably through means of cooperation and understanding. So even if they're looking for new life and new civilizations, and they're boldly going where no one has gone before, you know, chances are they've been here already, and they've been here for a long time. And it's not just they showed up in 1947 in New Mexico. So it's one of those things where, there's probably things that have already been here, things that have been kind of helping and maybe sometimes hurting humanity, maybe either outright hurting humanity or outright helping humanity. But no matter what, I think they've been at least interfering in some way with human life in some capacity.
For a long time?
Probably for a long time.
I'd say since the beginning. You know, I think they've been watching us for a long time.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about human beings is we're still the only thing like us on this entire planet.
Right.
And, you know, there's all kinds of life forms on the planet that are very similar to each other with how they behave, what they are like, their lifespans, how they interact, the way they raise their young, the way they are with each other. But with human beings, there's nothing that's really in that close approximation to us, even if you want to say like primates or whatever. They're still very far off from where we are. Right. So how exactly did that occur? And now people have all kinds of different explanations for that, but there is no arguing that every single culture talks about their origin being of the sky, that they're not from here. There's no origin story of culture talking about, oh, well, my people rose from the earth, or my people we used to be Neanderthal, or we used to be monkeys, or we used to be primates, or whatever. There's no origin story in any culture on the entire earth that expresses that. It all expresses some kind of divinity, some kind of higher consciousness, some kind of higher being, basically bestowing these kinds of things upon us, and using us either for worse or for better, depending upon which cultural story. And they're all very similar, and they all have very similar kinds of sequence of events and characters playing out those events in very similar ways. So that's kind of interesting, so all that sort of stuff is just I think it's all linked. It's all the same stuff. It's all together. It's all we're talking about all the same sort of things,
right?
And I think all of it's connected, but it's just what we're doing with this kind of knowledge at this point. I feel like it's being played as a distraction. I feel like a lot of it is being kind of amplified when they want to amplify certain things, and it's a shame because it's such a truth that we should be made aware of at this point, that obviously some people know of and have been keeping hidden from us at large for a very long time.
Yeah. And from a practical point of view, it's endless material for stories, Pete.
Oh,
you can make
as a storyteller, it's fascinating as all hell. Yeah, to explore, just even thinking about it, just to say, okay, there's life not of this planet that's more intelligent than us, that has been visiting us for eons.
Right.
Just even to say that, you can already conjure up thousands of stories of like, well, what would that have been like?
Exactly. Yeah. So we've been hour and a half, so that's kind of cool. Thanks for hanging out. But one last question: out of all the cryptids, if you had only one that you could actually encounter, like no for real, like there it is, holy shit, standing in front, which one would it be?
I think the one I'd be most scared of would probably be a Wendigo.
Okay, right. I agree.
But
and survive. You would see it. It brushed past you. A hair or feather would fall at your feet, and it's gone. And you could pick it up and say, "Holy shit, I lived. I'm getting out of here. Let's analyze this." Which one would it be?
It'd be cool to see like a reptilian, like a lizard man sort of a thing.
That's cool.
If I could survive to tell the story.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool to see.
Lizard. So the lizard. Wow, the lizard people. That's fun. I thought maybe you'd say something like Sasquatch or Yeti, but
no, I mean they're so accepted at this point. I don't think that I think you just wander out in certain parts of the world for long enough, and you'll come across something.
Accidentally come across one. No, they're very popular. That's for sure.
I want to see something that oh wow, so that really is real. Interesting.
Lizard people. You're right. That's a people joke about that. Oh, the lizard people. You're right. There's not a lot of evidence and reports on lizard people. It's still internet.
Yeah. It's odd too, because even on my channel, if I just say, I mean, hell, I said reptilian on your channel. Even if I just say reptilian, I get hit with a little Google disclaimer. Jeez. saying that you don't even have to go in depth. You could just say the word. Wow. And it's like, well, okay, well, that's made up. Reptilians don't exist. They're fictional. Okay.
They sure are trying hard to convince us.
Doth protest too much.
Yeah. That's do you know what I say now? I believe it all. About 10 years ago, I was skeptical as hell. I mean, dude, I was like really very skeptical, right? After the shit that's been going on for a few years, I do the opposite. I believe it all. A three-headed red baby that lives in the jungle. Yeah, sure, why not, man? Until
I'm open.
I believe it.
I'm open to all of it. But the thing is also, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, let's say all these things exist. Well, I still got to pay the rent, and I still got to feed myself today. So let me figure that out.
Don't get afraid of it. Don't get obsessed. It's awesome. It's great. Knowledge is power. The more you learn, right? But yeah, you still got to wake up in the morning and deal with the kids and the wife and job and bills and taxes and shit. So don't get too lost. So anyways, all right, Pete. Well, look, man, thanks for coming on. I think you picked up a couple more backers in here.
I did. Thank you very much for those that are in the chat. In particular, I saw Curtis and Richard Puppelmeyer had backed. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah. So, like I said, I got some cool people that hang out here on the channel, and I'm trying to grow it more. I'm not I'm not obsessed with trying to grow it. I want to kind of just be natural. If it works, it works. If it doesn't,
for anyone that's trying to do the YouTube thing or any of this stuff, the worst thing you could do is to just rush into all of it. Right. Whether it's making a comic, whether it's doing the YouTube thing, whatever it is. And then the second worst thing you can do is to expect instant success with all of it. Just get ready to fall in love with the process. Yeah. Fall in love with the aspect of doing the work and doing it when you can, and do it to the best of your ability. And you'll get better and better and better at it, like anything else you've ever done in your life. Yeah. So just stick with it. Don't get discouraged.
That's cool. All right. Well, any last words before you go? Before we wrap this up?
No, that's about it. Thank you so much. And everybody in the chat, thank you guys too. Appreciate it.
Cool. All right, Pete. You take care. And I will, the next couple nights, I'll DM you this info I got on this whole Connie Willis Sasquatch Coast to Coast thing. Or just maybe look it up yourself. Yeah,
feel free to send me a DM if there's anyone in particular that you think I should take a look at.
That's cool. I just think it's your kind of thing, and you should just know it's out there, and it's fun. It's fun to listen to and learn about. So anyways. All right, Pete. Thanks again, man. You have a good one. We'll see you around.
Thank you. You too. See ya.
All right. Later.